In 1998, Nintendo introduced the world to a villain so captivating, so thoroughly evil, that he would define video game antagonism for a generation. But here's the question that's haunted the Zelda community for over 25 years. Was Ocarina of Time's Ganondorf actually evil from the start, or did the Triforce of Power transform a desperate king into the Demon King? The answer isn't what most players think, and it fundamentally changes how we understand the most important villain in Nintendo history. Let's start with what the game actually shows us. When players first encounter Ganondorf through the window of Hyrule Castle, he's already plotting, already scheming. The cutscene presents him kneeling before the King of Hyrule, feigning loyalty while clearly harboring sinister intentions. This is the game's first impression of the character, a man whose treachery is so obvious that even a child can see through it. But this scene happens after Ganondorf has already left the desert, after he's already been exposed to the wealth and power of Hyrule proper, after he's already learned about the Triforce. The game doesn't show us what came before. To understand Ganondorf's nature, we need to examine his origins. The Gerudo are introduced in Ocarina of Time as a tribe of desert warriors, exclusively female except for one male born every 100 years. According to Gerudo law, that male becomes their king by birthright. Ganondorf didn't seize power through conquest or cunning, he inherited it simply by being born male. The game establishes this through dialogue with the Gerudo and through environmental storytelling in the desert fortress and the haunted wasteland beyond. The Gerudo live in harsh conditions. The desert provides little, and the fortress exists on the very edge of Hyrule's borders. When players explore Gerudo Valley and the fortress, the contrast with Hyrule's lush fields and prosperous towns becomes stark. While Hyrule Castletown thrives with shops and citizens, while Lon Lon Ranch prospers, while Kakariko Village nestles safely at the foot of Death Mountain, the Gerudo survive in an unforgiving wasteland. The game doesn't explicitly state that this disparity motivates Ganondorf, but it establishes the context in which he rises to power. What the game does make clear is Ganondorf's ambition. When he approaches the King of Hyrule, he comes seeking an alliance. The specifics of what he offers aren't detailed, but the king trusts him enough to allow him into the castle, to permit him access to the royal family. This suggests Ganondorf presented himself as a legitimate ruler seeking diplomatic relations. The King of Hyrule, despite Princess Zelda's warnings, sees no reason to distrust the King of the Gerudo. This paints a picture of a man capable of sophisticated deception, able to mask his intentions behind a veneer of legitimacy. But here's where it gets complicated. Princess Zelda, as a child, has prophetic dreams warning her about Ganondorf. She sees through his deception instantly. When Link arrives at the castle, she's already convinced that Ganondorf intends to betray Hyrule and claim the Triforce. The game presents her intuition as correct. Every warning she gives proves accurate. But the question becomes, was Ganondorf always planning betrayal? Or did Zelda's dreams, born from the goddess's foresight, identify a threat that was still forming? The timeline of events matters here. Ganondorf learns about the Triforce and its location in the Sacred Realm before coming to Hyrule Castle. This knowledge doesn't come from the king, it predates his diplomatic approach. The game suggests through various NPCs and lore tablets that legends of the Triforce are known throughout Hyrule, though most consider them myth. Ganondorf, however, believes. He doesn't just seek power in a general sense, he specifically seeks the Triforce, the ultimate power left by the goddesses Din, Nehru, and Ferori. This is critical because it establishes that Ganondorf's ambition extends beyond conventional conquest. He's not simply seeking to expand Gerudo territory or improve his people's circumstances through military means. He's pursuing divine power, something that transcends mortal conflict. The question is whether this pursuit stems from pure malice or whether it represents something more complex. The game provides a crucial piece of information through the Great Deku Tree. When Link first receives his quest, the Deku Tree explains that a wicked man from the desert cursed him. This happened before Ganondorf entered the Sacred Realm, before he obtained the Triforce of Power. The Deku Tree calls him wicked, uses terms that denote moral evil, not just ambition. The curse itself, slowly killing the guardian spirit of the Kokiri Forest, serves no tactical purpose for claiming the Triforce. It's cruelty for its own sake, or at minimum the elimination of an obstacle through the most harmful means available. Similarly, Ganondorf's actions on Death Mountain happen in the child timeline, before the Triforce splits. He feeds Volvagia, the ancient dragon, and prepares it as a weapon of terror. He infests Dodongo's cavern with monsters, cutting off the Goron's food supply and threatening their extinction. These aren't the actions of a desperate man seeking to level an unfair playing field. These are calculated attacks on innocent populations designed to eliminate potential resistance and secure the spiritual stones. When Link opens the door of time and enters the Sacred Realm, Ganondorf follows. The game explicitly states that this was his plan all along, to use Link and Zelda as keys to unlock the path he couldn't access himself. He needed someone pure of heart to open the way, and he manipulated events to make it happen. This level of patient, long-term scheming, willingly putting others through suffering as part of a multi-stage plan, speaks to a particular mindset. It's not the desperate gamble of someone with no options, it's the calculated strategy of someone who views other beings as tools. The moment Ganondorf touches the Triforce becomes the pivotal event of Ocarina of Time's story. According to the game's lore, the Triforce grants the wish of whoever touches it, but only if that person possesses a balance of power, wisdom, and courage. Ganondorf does not. His heart is unbalanced, dominated by his desire for power. As a result, the Triforce splits into 3 pieces. Ganondorf claims the Triforce of Power, the piece that resonates with his nature. Link receives courage, and Zelda receives wisdom. Does the Triforce of Power corrupt its wielder? The game never explicitly states this. What it does show is that the Triforce of Power grants immense strength and near immortality. Ganondorf uses this power to conquer Hyrule over the next 7 years. He transforms the world. Hyrule Castle Town becomes a den of re-deads, undead creatures that freeze victims with screams before consuming them. The once peaceful town is overrun with these horrors, its citizens either dead or scattered. Death Mountain erupts with supernatural fire. Lake Hylia drains to a fraction of its former size. The Temple of Time area becomes surrounded by darkness and monsters. The game shows this transformed world when Link awakens as an adult. The change is total and devastating. But here's what's important. The game demonstrates that Ganondorf makes deliberate choices about how to wield his power. He doesn't simply conquer Hyrule and rule it, he desecrates it. He specifically targets the temples, the sacred sites connected to the sages. He places powerful monsters in each temple, Volvagia in the Fire Temple, Morpha in the Water Temple, Bongo Bongo in the Shadow Temple, Twinrova in the Spirit Temple. These aren't random attacks, they're systematic suppression of the spiritual forces that could oppose him. The sages themselves suffer under Ganondorf's rule. Saria is trapped in the Forest Temple, watching her home become twisted and corrupted. Darunia faces the resurrection of Volvagia, knowing his people will be fed to the dragon as sacrifices. Ruto sees her domain poisoned and her people threatened. Impa witnesses the Shadow Temple, already a place of dark history, become something worse. Nabooru, Ganondorf's own second-in-command before her awakening as a sage, is brainwashed by Twinrova and forced to serve the very man she opposed. The cruelty is specific and targeted. Ganondorf doesn't just neutralize threats, he makes examples. He causes suffering beyond what's tactically necessary. When players learn that Ganondorf intends to feed the Gorons to Volvagia one by one, the horror isn't just in the deaths, but in the terror, in making an entire race watch their people be consumed. This isn't strategy, this is malice. Yet, the game provides an interesting counter-narrative through Nabooru. Before her capture and brainwashing, Nabooru makes clear statements about Ganondorf. She tells Link that she's opposed to Ganondorf, that his methods disgust her, but she also identifies herself as Gerudo. The game establishes that not all Gerudos support their king's actions. The Gerudo are not inherently evil. They're simply a tribe following their cultural law that the male born among them becomes king. Nibiru's existence proves that Ganondorf's evil is individual, not cultural or racial. This matters because it eliminates one potential justification for Ganondorf's actions. He's not driven by loyalty to his people or a genuine desire to improve their circumstances. If he were, Nibiru, a high-ranking Gerudo warrior, would support him. Instead, she actively opposes him, suggesting that his pursuit of power has nothing to do with Gerudo welfare and everything to do with personal ambition. The concept of destiny complicates this analysis. The Legend of Zelda series establishes that certain conflicts repeat across time. The hero, the princess, and the manifestation of evil appear again and again in different eras. Ocarina of Time represents one iteration of this eternal cycle. But the game is careful about how it presents this idea. Princess Zelda has prophetic dreams, suggesting divine foreknowledge of Ganondorf's threat. The Great Deku Tree speaks of destiny and evil. The entire structure of the game, 3 spiritual stones, 3 goddess pearls, the Master Sword that can only be wielded by the chosen hero, reinforces that these events follow a pattern.
Does this mean Ganondorf is predestined to be evil? The game never states this directly. What it shows is that evil arises, that a threat emerges, and that the goddess's design includes countermeasures. The Master Sword exists specifically as a weapon against evil. The sage's power exists to seal evil away. These aren't preventative measures that stop evil from arising, they're reactive tools that activate once evil has manifested. This suggests that the choice to become evil precedes the destiny to be defeated. Ganondorf's final confrontation with Link provides crucial insight into his character. After Link defeats him in his humanoid form, Ganondorf uses the Triforce of Power to transform into Ganon, a massive, monstrous, pig-like demon. This transformation is significant. The game establishes through visual language and through Ganondorf's own words that this form represents his true nature, unleashed, unrestrained by human limitations. Ganon is pure destructive power, mindless rage barely directed toward the goal of destroying Link. But even in this form, after Link defeats him, there's a telling moment. Ganondorf, reverting to his humanoid form and sealed by the combined power of the sages, delivers his final lines. He doesn't express regret, he doesn't show remorse. Instead, he curses Link and Zelda, promising that his hatred will rain down on their descendants. The game presents this as a literal curse, not metaphorical anger. Ganondorf's dying act is to ensure that even in defeat, even sealed away, his malice persists and threatens future generations. This is where the game makes its clearest statement about Ganondorf's nature. A tragic figure, pushed to villainy by circumstance, might show some recognition of how things went wrong. A victim of the Triforce of Power's corrupting influence might demonstrate that some part of his original self survived. But Ganondorf shows neither. His final words are pure spite, pure hatred, pure determination that if he cannot win, then at least he can ensure others suffer. Compare this to how other Zelda games portray similar characters. The Wind Waker, which features the same Ganondorf centuries later, gives him a more complex portrayal. In that game, he speaks wistfully of the desert winds, expresses something that could be interpreted as nostalgia or even regret for what was lost. Twilight Princess presents Ganondorf as a figure trapped by pride and hatred, but also someone who maintains a kind of terrible dignity. These later portrayals add layers that aren't present in Ocarina of Time. In Ocarina of Time, Ganondorf is remarkably straightforward. The game provides no sympathetic backstory, no moment of doubt, no instance where he shows kindness or restraint. Every action he takes is either deceptive, cruel, or destructive. Even his treatment of his own people is questionable. He takes Kome and Kotake, the twin Rova witches who raised him, and uses them as bosses in the Spirit Temple, willing to let them die fighting Link if necessary. The question of agency is important here. Some interpretations suggest that higher forces, destiny, the Triforce of Power, the cycle of reincarnation, rob Ganondorf of true choice. If he's predestined to be evil, if the Triforce of Power inherently corrupts, if he's simply playing a role in an eternal pattern, then can he be held morally responsible? The game's structure suggests otherwise. The Triforce responds to what's already in a person's heart. It didn't make Ganondorf desire power, it responded to that pre-existing desire. The split happened because his heart was already unbalanced. Similarly, the cycle of reincarnation in Zelda lore doesn't create evil, it describes the pattern that evil follows when it arises. Demise's curse in Skyward Sword, revealed in a later game but retroactively applying to the timeline, establishes that an incarnation of hatred will continuously emerge to threaten the descendants of Link and Zelda. But this curse doesn't control Ganondorf's actions. It describes what he is, a manifestation of hatred, not what he must do. The evidence throughout Ocarina of Time consistently points to the same conclusion. Before obtaining the Triforce of Power, Ganondorf curses the Great Deku Tree, infests Death Mountain, and manipulates events to gain access to the Sacred Realm. These actions demonstrate malice and callous disregard for life before any divine artifact could have influenced him. After obtaining the Triforce of Power, he systematically destroys and terrorizes Hyrule, going beyond strategic necessity to inflict maximum suffering. And in defeat, he curses future generations, rather than showing any sign of the person he might have been. The game presents opportunities for a more sympathetic reading, but consistently declines to take them. The Gerudo's harsh circumstances could excuse Ganondorf's initial ambitions, but Nibiru's opposition eliminates this justification. The Triforce of Power could be portrayed as inherently corrupting, but the game never makes this claim, instead showing it amplifying what already exists. The cycle of destiny could remove agency, but the game structures events to show Ganondorf making deliberate choices at every stage.
What makes Ocarina of Time's Ganondorf particularly interesting is precisely this lack of ambiguity. Later games in the series explore more complex villain motivations. They give antagonists sympathetic backstories, tragic circumstances, or at least comprehensible goals. Ocarina of Time does none of this. Ganondorf wants power. He's willing to do anything to obtain it. He shows no loyalty, no mercy, no restraint, and no remorse. He is, in the most straightforward sense, a villain. The term Demon King isn't just a title in this context, it's a description. When Ganondorf transforms into Ganon, the game presents this as revealing his true nature. The pig demon form isn't a disguise or a costume, it's what he becomes when the last restraints fall away. The game's visual language, enemy designs, and environmental storytelling all reinforce that this is a being of pure malevolence. The final battle takes place in a ruined arena surrounded by flame and darkness. Ganon wields massive swords and attacks with savage, mindless fury. There's nothing human left in this form, nothing redeemable or understandable. But here's what makes this portrayal effective rather than simplistic. Ganondorf isn't evil because the game needs a villain. He's evil because he chooses power over everything else. He has intelligence, patience, and strategic thinking. He's not a mindless force of destruction. He's a calculating manipulator who becomes destruction incarnate. The game respects players enough to present a genuinely malevolent antagonist without apology or softening. The impact of this portrayal extends beyond Ocarina of Time itself. Ganondorf became gaming's archetypal villain because of this game's uncompromising presentation. The moment when players first see adult Link's Hyrule, transformed into a nightmare realm, carries weight because Ganondorf's evil is total. The stakes feel real because the villain is genuinely threatening, genuinely cruel, genuinely committed to his destructive goals. There's no moment where players wonder if maybe they're fighting on the wrong side. The moral clarity strengthens the narrative rather than weakening it. This doesn't mean the game is unsophisticated. Ocarina of Time tackles complex themes: the loss of childhood, the weight of destiny, the price of heroism, the passage of time and its effects on the world. But it chooses to explore these themes through a straightforward conflict between good and evil. Link is heroic, Zelda is wise and courageous, Ganondorf is evil. The complexity comes from how these clear roles play out, not from questioning whether they exist. In the end, the question posed at the beginning has a definitive answer based on the evidence presented in the game. Was Ocarina of Time's Ganondorf a true Demon King? Yes.
Not because of the Triforce of Power, not because of destiny or prophecy, not because of his harsh upbringing or his people's circumstances. He was a demon king because he chose to be. He chose to curse the innocent. He chose to manipulate and deceive. He chose to conquer through terror. He chose to desecrate the sacred. And in his final moment, he chose to curse the future rather than accept defeat with any shred of dignity. The game presents a villain who is evil not by accident or by tragic necessity, but by deliberate, repeated, consistent choice. That's what makes Ocarina of Time's Ganondorf terrifying and memorable. That's what makes his defeat satisfying, and that's what makes him a true demon king in every sense that matters. Not because of power or transformation or title, but because of the darkness in his heart that existed long before any magic could amplify it.